The sound came first. One sharp crack from downstairs. Then silence. A mother froze in the hallway, listening to footsteps moving slowly across the floor below. Her children were asleep. Her husband was away. There was no security camera, no smartphone in her hand, and no police officer standing outside the door. She had seconds to decide what to do. But this mother had something most people today have forgotten: a plan. She quietly gathered her children, moved them into a room chosen years earlier, locked the door, and followed a series of simple precautions passed down through generations. What happened next would make this old-fashioned home security method seem almost unbelievable, because the room wasn't a bunker. It wasn't made of steel. It didn't have an expensive alarm system. It was an ordinary room in an ordinary house. Yet the family had prepared it in a way that could buy them something priceless during a terrifying emergency: time. And that is exactly what makes these forgotten, safe room tricks so fascinating. For generations, families had to think differently about home security. There were no smart locks sending alerts to your phone, no instant emergency notifications, no doorbell cameras showing you who was standing outside. If something went wrong in the middle of the night, families often had to depend on preparation, awareness, strong doors, simple communication methods, and clever household habits. Some of those ideas disappeared as technology took over. Others were simply forgotten, but hidden inside those old methods were lessons about something every family still needs today: how to create a safer place when help isn't there yet. And here's where the story gets interesting. Some of these tricks weren't about stopping someone. They were about slowing down a problem. They were about creating barriers. They were about making sure a frightened family didn't have to run through the house searching for a flashlight, a phone, keys, or emergency supplies. And one of the most surprising lessons is that the safest room wasn't always the room people expected. The strongest looking door wasn't necessarily the most important part, and one tiny mistake that many households made could completely undermine everything they had prepared. Imagine realizing that only after an emergency had already begun. That is why, as we go through these 25 forgotten safe room tricks, don't just think about what families did decades ago. Think about your own home. Where would you go if something unexpected happened tonight? Would everyone in your household know what to do? Could you communicate immediately? Would you have light? Could you leave safely if the emergency suddenly changed? And, most importantly, would your plan actually work under pressure? Because the final trick on this list isn't a piece of equipment. It isn't a secret lock. It isn't some mysterious device hidden behind a wall. It is a simple principle that could be more valuable than all 24 tricks before it combined. And once you understand it, you'll see why experienced families never depended on just one layer of protection. So stay with me until the very end, because some of these forgotten methods may completely change the way you think about emergency preparedness and home security. If you enjoy true stories, forgotten wisdom, survival lessons, and practical ideas from the past, make sure to *like this video and subscribe to Ethan Cross. And I want to know something before we continue. Asterisk, where are you watching this video from? Drop your asterisk city and country in the comments. Now, turn down the lights. Imagine that first sound coming from downstairs. And let's go back to a time when families had no choice but to be prepared. Because when the police were still minutes away, the next few seconds belonged entirely to them. Imagine hearing glass break downstairs at 2 in the morning. You don't know who is outside. You don't know how long help will take. And you have only a few seconds to decide what to do. Long before modern security systems, smartphones, and instant emergency alerts, families relied on simple ideas to create safer spaces inside their homes. Some of these old-fashioned home security tricks were surprisingly clever. Not because they were complicated, but because they bought something extremely valuable. Time. Today on Ethan Cross, we're looking at 25 forgotten safe room tricks that families once used to make a vulnerable room harder to enter and easier to defend. These are historical home security ideas, adapted for modern common sense. They are not a substitute for calling emergency services, having working smoke alarms, or following local safety recommendations. The first trick was choosing the right room. Families who thought carefully about emergencies often selected an interior room with a strong door, few windows, and a reliable way to communicate with the outside. The room itself became the first layer of protection. Second was the heavy door. A solid core wooden door was far more difficult to force than a lightweight hollow door. Even today, the quality of the door can matter just as much as the lock installed on it. Third was reinforcing the door frame. An old lock could be surprisingly strong, but a weak frame could fail first. Reinforcing the frame and using properly installed hardware could make the entrance more resistant to forced entry. Fourth was the simple door brace. Before sophisticated security equipment existed, people sometimes used heavy furniture or purpose-built braces to make a closed door harder to open. The important lesson is not to improvise dangerous obstacles, but to understand that the strength of the entire doorway matters. Fifth was keeping a working flashlight inside the safe room. When the power goes out, darkness creates confusion. A flashlight gives you visibility without requiring you to leave the room searching for one. Sixth was keeping a charged phone nearby. This may sound obvious today, but it represents the modern version of an old principle. Communication should be available immediately. A phone should be charged, accessible, and ready to contact emergency services. Seventh was having a backup communication method. Before cell phones, families depended on landlines, neighbors, whistles, radios, and other forms of communication. Today, a battery-powered emergency radio can still be useful during major outages. Eighth was knowing the exits. A safe room should never become a trap. Families benefited from knowing which doors and windows could serve as emergency exits if fire or another danger made staying inside unsafe. Ninth was practicing the plan. The smartest households did not wait for an emergency to decide what everyone should do. They discussed simple actions ahead of time. Children knew where to go. Adults knew who would call for help. Everyone understood the difference between sheltering and evacuating. 10th was using simple visual indicators. Some families used basic ways to identify rooms or communicate silently during emergencies. The modern lesson is simple. Agree on clear signals before a crisis happens. 11th was keeping essential supplies together. A small emergency kit could include water, basic first aid supplies, a flashlight, batteries, necessary medications, and a phone charger. The goal was not to create a fortress. It was to avoid leaving the room unnecessarily during an emergency. 12th was keeping keys accessible. During a fire or evacuation, searching through drawers for keys can waste precious seconds. A household emergency plan should account for how doors and gates will be opened safely when needed. 13th was maintaining windows. Windows are often overlooked in home security. Families learned that damaged locks, broken frames, and neglected hardware could create unnecessary vulnerabilities. Regular maintenance can improve both security and emergency readiness. 14th was keeping landscaping under control. Overgrown bushes can block visibility around doors and windows. Traditional homes often relied on clear sightlines because seeing what was happening outside provided an important advantage. 15th was improving exterior lighting. Before smart cameras existed, lighting was one of the simplest ways to increase visibility. Motion-activated lights are the modern version of that basic idea. 16th was knowing the neighbors. One of the most overlooked security tools has never been technology. It has been community. Trusted neighbors can notice unusual activity, check on vulnerable households, and provide assistance during emergencies. 17th was avoiding predictable routines. Old security wisdom often emphasized awareness. If a household always followed exactly the same pattern, unusual activity could be easier to notice or easier for an observer to predict. Modern security works best when paired with basic awareness of your surroundings. 18th was securing secondary entrances. People naturally focus on the front door, but garages, back doors, basement entrances, and accessible windows deserve attention too. A home is only as secure as its weakest accessible entry point. 19th was protecting emergency information. Families once kept important information in a known location. Today, that can mean having emergency contacts, medical information, addresses, and other critical details available to trusted household members. 20th was teaching children what not to do. In a frightening situation, children may instinctively investigate strange sounds. A simple family rule, do not investigate an unknown threat, can prevent unnecessary exposure to danger. 21st was keeping noise and confusion under control. During an emergency, panic can make decision-making harder. Families who practiced calm communication had a better chance of following their plan. 22nd was having a backup meeting location. If everyone becomes separated during an evacuation, a predetermined meeting place can help family members reconnect without searching randomly. 23rd was checking the safe room regularly. A plan is useless if the flashlight batteries are dead, the phone charger is missing, or the door no longer works properly. Emergency equipment should be checked periodically. 24th was knowing when not to use the safe room. This may be the most important lesson of all. A safe room is not automatically the safest place during every emergency. A fire, gas leak, structural damage, or another immediate hazard may require evacuation. The correct response depends on the situation. And 25th was understanding the real purpose of every trick, buying time. That was the secret behind many old home security methods. They were not designed to make a house completely impossible to enter. They were designed to create delay, increase awareness, provide communication, and give families more time to make a safe decision. Today, technology has transformed home security. Cameras can send alerts to smartphones. Smart locks can provide remote access. Alarm systems can notify monitoring services. But technology does not replace preparation. A strong emergency plan still begins with something incredibly simple. Knowing what you will do before something happens. Choose a practical emergency room. Keep communication available. Maintain doors and windows. Keep emergency supplies accessible. Make sure everyone in the household understands the plan. And always prioritize evacuation when the emergency requires it, because the most powerful security system in any home is not a hidden trick. It is preparation. The families who understood that lesson generations ago were not necessarily stronger, richer, or better equipped. They simply understood one thing modern life sometimes makes us forget. When every second matters, preparation can create the time you need. This is Ethan Cross. If you enjoy forgotten history, practical survival lessons, old-fashioned wisdom, and stories about the clever ways ordinary families prepared for extraordinary situations, subscribe to Ethan Cross, because some of the best lessons from the past are not really about the past at all. They are about being ready for tomorrow.